When it comes to conditioning, or rather deconditioning especially, because there's a metric fuck ton of very unhealthy systems out there and expectations, and they've been normalized. They're touted even. But they're systems ultimately of coercive control. And despite whatever the PR in front of them may be, and that could be PR that's institutional, or it can be PR that's familial, or otherwise interpersonal, there is absolutely no viable excuse for coercive control. Coercive control is to do one thing: arrest agency from the one being controlled or ones being controlled, and put it into the hands of bumbling buffoons, dipshits, if you will, to cite a more traditional vernacular. They have no idea what they're doing ultimately, but my God, are they heavily invested in the illusion of it and making sure that you believe in it too, because that is the source of the steam. But it can be really difficult to undo conditioning, especially when it's developmental, and of course it almost always is. I find one little trick that helps a lot is if you can find those things that have been conditioned in you that are really holding you back, and look those up. Now look them up in a search engine specifically, whatever it may be. Let's use an example. Here's a cultural one in the West that, like many excuses to coercively control or have the crabs in a barrel effect for people, is you have to pay your dues. Now, of course, there's a kernel of truth in that. The kernel of truth is, yeah, you have to do your work, whatever that may be, your developmental path, your genomic expression. But the idea of paying your dues is often co-opted instinctively by coercively controlling types as a way to keep you stuck on a hamster wheel, endlessly serving them and their systems by extension. So, it's good to know. First, look up anything you can to start debunking these internal myths. And then, specifically in this case, you might want to look up why paying your dues is a myth, and then see exactly in what kind of contexts those fall under. Cultivating discernment between the more organic what would I call it? The more, I don't know, natural order systems. The Environomicon. According to the Environomicon. Which, unlike the Necronomicon, is not a metaphorical book of insidious necromantic and madness-inducing spells, but the opposite. It's the antithesis. And in a world filled with the walking dead, so to speak, especially if you've been raised by them, it can be very difficult to discern, and it takes some doing, because they're mostly on default, autopilot, ironically pointing at each other as the undead. When they both are. Kind of like in Sixth Sense, when Haley Joel Osment is like, I see dead people. They don't know they're dead. They don't. They also don't know that there's a remedy. And that these horrible things that they complain about so often can be remedied. But unfortunately, when dealing with the more stubbornly undead, well, as I've come to find later in life, after years of attempting to, solve these problems for people who perpetually have been bringing them to me, and they don't want them to be solved. And I didn't understand that. I was like, well, why? Why wouldn't you want these problems to be solved? Of course, I'm not asking them this. It's more an observation. Because if you're doing that kind of dance with the undead, direct communication kind of goes out the window, unfortunately. But anyway, I've come to find that it's because if they don't have anything to complain about, then they're left with an even bigger problem, which is themselves. So their problems by extension are distractions and coping mechanisms for being infected by the Swedish Book of Necronomic Spells. I'm kidding, that's from Metalocalypse. The Necronomicon, what was that? What was his name? The Arab guy? The Mad? Oh, anyway. This is all metaphorical. Sort of. It's that unusual place between stranger than fiction and thus a little bit too difficult to describe, so it's unconventional, and therefore there's a language of parable, fable, metacognition, meta-narrative, to more accurately describe it, and in my experience, accuracy is important. So anyway, that's a little thing about conditioning. Lord have mercy. And c'est la vie. Thanks for tuning in.